Mark, it was a very complicated release from the Premier League when it arrived in people's inboxes and on the internet yesterday. So you've had a chance to break it down. What exactly is City accused of here? And I guess for all supporters, the thing they want to know is what are the ramifications?
Like you rightly say, this is a very complex and difficult situation to sum up very simply, because there is so much depth and detail to exactly this report and this investigation. Just to break things down in a very simple term, they've been charged with more than 100 breaches of financial rules after an investigation that has taken in excess of 4 years. The breaches occurred between 2009 and 2018, and that's when the investigation started in 2018. It's also important to point out as well that one of the charges is that Manchester City have failed to act accordingly with regards to giving the right information to support the investigation and help them with their investigation as well. So that's also important to point out. But quite simply, this isn't just about how much money they've spent in the transfer market and how much money they've paid for players. This is a much bigger picture that goes back over many, many years.
OK, so we know it's going to go to a commission. What will this look like? When are we likely to know what the result is?
That's the big question. How long will this take? Well, I touched upon it just there. It took in excess of 4 years for this investigation to show its findings. So therefore, if Manchester City fans are expecting this to be sorted out anytime soon, then that's absolutely not going to be the case. An independent commission will be formed of 3 people from the 15 members, or potentially some of the non-members as well, and they'll be the ones that are deciding exactly what happens with regards to the outcome of this. We have to remember that Manchester City had a very similar situation with UEFA some time back. They lost that, but went to the Court of Arbitration Appeals as well, so for sport, and therefore they had their ban, which was a 2-year European ban, reduced, and their fine was also reduced as well. One of the reasons for that changing when they went to CAS was something called the Statute of Limitations, which limits the availability of evidence to 5 years. And Manchester City said you can't go back further than 5 years because that's what's in the agreement. The Premier League don't have the statute of limitations, so therefore they can go back and investigate as far back as they wish. You have to remember as well that Manchester City, whilst they won that case against UEFA, have the best lawyers that are paid millions and millions of pounds, who will be going through the investigation with a fine-tooth comb, line by line, report by report, chapter by chapter, to work out exactly their position with regards to every single one of these charges. This will take some time. I know Manchester City fans will be looking at this and thinking, I don't want this to overshadow what is a brilliant era for my football club. They're enjoying the best years in the history of the club, with Pep Guardiola playing some of the most attractive football. I don't want this to be lingering on in the background for many years to come, but it's likely this will take some time. There'll be no quick resolution, and that's the simple thing with regards to this. This is very, very complicated. OK, so that's the long term. I guess another question is, what about the short term? What does this mean for City right now? Will this have any impact on them in that shorter period? There'll be no impact immediately on points deductions or transfer embargoes or anything like that. The only effect that this potentially could have is on the players and their mentality and mindset. Whether they let something like this affect them, it's not going to affect them on the pitch. But whether it just lingers in the background is something that we don't know. Of course, Pep Guardiola has always spoken very publicly about the support he's had from the board. He has a fantastic relationship with the owners at Manchester City. There's a real trust there. And he's always sat in press conferences and said, I'm really comfortable with the position of the football club. I've been assured that everything is above board and in order. There's no issues there, so I'm comfortable with that and I trust them. You talk about some of the punishments. There are varying punishments that could be dished out to Manchester City off the back of this investigation. They range from being quite severe to minor. You know, some of the things could be suspension from playing league matches. They could have a points deduction. That would be applied in the current season of the investigation being completed. So that wouldn't be taken back a few years. It wouldn't be this season. It will be when the investigation stops and is completed and they bring out their findings. That's when they'll say, right, there is also a points deduction, should there be one. They can cancel or refuse to register players as well, which would be effectively a transfer embargo for Manchester City. Obviously, financial penalties. They had one from UEFA. They could get financial penalties from the Premier League, or it could be a combination of various things that I've just mentioned there. So there's not one single punishment here. It could be a complex situation where there are various different punishments.
Okay, right. So we go through all of that, all the commission. They deliver their findings, which we understand will just simply be posted on their website, which is interesting. If this doesn't go City's way, what comeback do they have? You've mentioned the Court of Arbitration for Sport, but why is this not an option?
This isn't an option. Like when they were fighting UEFA a few years ago, they went to the Court of Arbitration for Sports and they fell upon Manchester City's side, but they can't do that in this situation. This will be done by an independent commission formed of 3 people from the 15 members or non-members as well. And if the initial investigation and the initial trial goes against Manchester City, they can appeal. So it isn't a simple case of this is your punishment, end of, you have to walk away and accept it. They can appeal to the Premier League again. They would then appoint an appeal panel which would be made up of new members. There are currently 6 members of the Premier League appeal panel. So this, once again, like we keep saying, could go on for some time.